The HOA secretly sold 500 acres of land right next to my lakefront cabin, without telling me. I had spent years restoring that land, turning it into a sanctuary for my late wife and me, and overnight, they tried to erase all of it. They thought a grieving widower would just surrender. They thought I would crumble quietly, but they didn't know me. They didn't know I had every deed, every receipt, every legal loophole ready. They didn't know I had a recording of their secret meetings, exposing their every shady move. 7 days to flip the script, 7 days to turn their betrayal into my ultimate victory. By the time they realized what had happened, the land they stole and the neighborhood they controlled were both legally mine. Frank Miller didn't just fight back. He became a legend, and the HOA, they were left crying over their own greed. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and water from the lake. I had always loved this place. Every sunrise over the water reminded me of her, my late wife, and the years we spent building a life here, a sanctuary away from the chaos of the world. But that morning, the calm shattered. I opened the mailbox and found a thick envelope. My heart sank before I even read it. Inside, documents I could hardly believe. The HOA had secretly sold 500 acres of land. Right next to my lakefront cabin, I dropped the papers. My hands shook. They hadn't just sold the land. They had sold my memories, my hard work, and the quiet refuge I thought was untouchable. The cabin, the shoreline, the trees I had planted, they all felt suddenly vulnerable. At first, disbelief took over. I reread the papers. Each signature, each clause screamed betrayal. But as I studied them, my shock slowly turned into something else. Something sharper, rage. They had underestimated me. They didn't know I had kept meticulous records, every payment for improvements, every receipt for labor, every legal document proving ownership. They didn't know I had a secret recording of their meetings where they discussed selling my land behind my back. And I didn't just know the laws, I knew the loopholes, every bylaw, every obscure clause they thought they could exploit. I had memorized them and I was ready. By the end of the morning, I had a plan. It wasn't just about taking back what was mine. It was about turning their betrayal against them, showing the HOA exactly what happens when you cross the wrong person. I called my attorney, laid out every document, every receipt, every recording. His eyes widened as I explained the loophole that would allow me to not only reclaim my land, but legally take control of the entire neighborhood they tried to claim. A calm determination settled over me. The HOA thought they were clever, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. By sunset, the first seeds of revenge were planted. Every move they had made to cheat me would soon be their undoing. And Frank Miller, the grieving widower they thought they had crushed, was about to become unstoppable. The next morning, I woke with a single thought: they underestimated me. I went through every document, every recording, every detail of the HOA secret sale. The meeting minutes, the signatures, the hidden clauses. They had left a trail, and I was ready to follow it. First, I gathered evidence. I mapped the 500 acres, noting every boundary, every parcel that had been illegally transferred. I marked dates, signatures, and discrepancies. Each paper I touched fueled a quiet fury. Then came the recording. Hidden in plain sight, I had captured the board plotting against me. Whispers about how Miller wouldn't notice, and will move quickly before he can react. Every word, every plan recorded for posterity. With my attorney on call, I began crafting a counter strategy. I had discovered a loophole obscure, buried deep in the bylaws. The HOA had violated multiple procedures, overlooked mandatory notifications, and failed to secure proper approvals. In short, they had no legal right to sell the land. By midweek, I was ready. I sent certified letters to the HOA citing their violations and outlined exactly how I intended to reclaim the property. I included excerpts from the recording, carefully redacted but damning enough to expose their secret dealings. The first reaction came fast. A flurry of calls, emails, and frantic letters. They were panicked. They didn't realize that their own words, their own meetings, had become evidence against them. Then I executed the next step, the legal filing. Not just to reclaim my 500 acres, but to assert a claim over the neighborhood parcels they had thought they controlled. Every loophole I had memorized, every bylaw they had ignored, became a weapon. By the fifth day, the HOA board members were in chaos. They were scrambling lawyers, trying to block my filings, sending threats. But each move they made only strengthened my position. Every single action, every single attempt to intimidate, was already anticipated and countered. Neighbors began to notice the tension. Whispers spread about the widow, who was taking on the HOA and winning. Some cheered silently, knowing the story of betrayal and comeback was unfolding in real time. And then, on the seventh day, it happened. The judge reviewed the filings, the evidence, and the recording. The decision was swift. The 500 acres returned to my ownership, and the HOA attempts to claim the neighborhood, legally null and void. For the first time in weeks, I stood on the porch of my lakefront cabin, feeling the sun on my face. Not just relief, but vindication. Every illegal action, every betrayal, every attempt to steal from me had blown up in their faces. The HOA had thought they were untouchable. They had thought I was defeated. But they had ignored one critical truth. A quiet, grieving widower can become a legal and strategic force no one expects. And by the time the HOA realized what had happened, Frank Miller had gone from victim to legend. The morning sun broke over the lake, sparkling across the water like it had always done. But today, the serenity felt different. Today, the battle was almost over. I had spent 7 days meticulously preparing, exploiting every loophole, every legal misstep the HOA had made, and gathering irrefutable proof of their betrayal. And now, the culmination was near. The HOA board had no idea what hit them. I walked into the county courthouse, files in hand, and faced the board members, their lawyers, and the judge. The room was silent, tense, the kind of silence that makes your stomach tighten. I laid it all out, the illegal sale of 500 acres, the hidden meetings captured on recording, the bylaws they had violated, and the meticulous records of my ownership. Each document I placed on the judge's desk landed like a hammer strike. The board members whispered nervously, trying to interject, but the judge held up a hand. He read carefully, line by line. Every flaw in their plan was exposed. Every illegal action they had taken was on display, undeniable. Their faces went from smug to pale to utterly shocked. They had underestimated me. When the judge delivered the verdict, the room held its breath. Effective immediately, the 500 acres previously sold without legal authority are returned to Mr. Frank Miller. Furthermore, all claims by the HOA to the surrounding neighborhood parcels are voided. The words echoed in the courtroom like a cannon blast. Board members froze, their lawyers slumped in disbelief. Karen, like figures if any were present, muttered under their breath. I felt a wave of relief, yes, but more than that, a surge of vindication. Every sneer, every condescending remark, every attempt to intimidate me had backfired spectacularly. As I walked out of the courthouse, the whispers had started. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some clapping silently, others shaking their heads in stunned admiration. The story of the quiet widower who had turned the tables on the entire HOA spread faster than any rumor. By evening, the news had reached nearly every resident of the former HOA territory. The betrayal that had seemed unstoppable was now a lesson in legal mastery and patience. Back at my lakefront cabin, I stepped onto the porch and gazed at the 500 acres, every tree, every shoreline, every square foot that had been threatened now securely mine. The steel gate at the entrance gleamed in the sunset. For the first time in weeks, I felt complete peace, not just because the land was mine, but because justice had been done. The HOA had tried to crush me, cheat me, intimidate me, but they had failed. Every illegal maneuver, every secret meeting, every attempt to silence me had become the very tools of my victory. I had turned grief into strategy, betrayal into power, and patience into triumph. Frank Miller, once a grieving widower, had become a legend in the HOA world, a cautionary tale for anyone who underestimated a man defending his home, his memories, and his rights. The land was safe. The neighborhood was legally mine, and the HOA, they would never forget the quiet man who had outsmarted them all. Because sometimes victory doesn't come from anger or force. It comes from knowledge, patience, and knowing every inch of your own land. And that day, the legend of Frank Miller was written into the history of HOA battles forever. Like, share, and subscribe for more HOA drama. This video is a dramatized, AI-generated story created for entertainment purposes only. Names, characters, and situations are fictional and do not represent any real individuals or events. This content fully complies with YouTube's community guidelines and policies.